everybody, and welcome again to the 2021 Newhallywood Silent Film Festival. I'm EJ Stevens, and we have a very, very special guest now with us who is tuning in all the way from Paris just for this little chat with us. He's been called an impresario. He's a musician, a writer, director, producer, savior of lost films. I think you've actually been called the Indiana Jones of lost films. Everybody, very special welcome to Serge Bromberg. Hi, Serge.
Hi, Edward.
Yes. So thank you very, very much for taking the time to be with us. First off, how are you doing? How's everything in Paris during the pandemic?
In snowy Paris, well, just like everywhere, there's no theaters, there's no restaurants, there's a curfew at 6 p.m. and it's actually near that. So we have no choice but stay home and speak with friends online. And here I am.
Probably watch a lot of films too, right?
Yes. Although, I always say that cinema is just an excuse to meet other people and share moments with them. And watching a film by yourself is not as fun as watching it with friends.
That is so true. Well, Serge, we brought you on. You're the founder of Lobster Films, one of the major restoration houses and film promotion houses around, especially for silent film. And tell us how you got into this crazy world.
Well, I could do the Freudian thing, I lie down and I say, oh, well, it's because of my father or my mother or something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, not at all. As long as I can remember, the first time I went to a cinema, I went to see Babes in Toyland with Lauren and Hardy. I was about 5. And my mother misread the newspaper and went to the wrong cinema. And the cinema was playing Kama Sutra.
Oh, okay.
She said, well, I took the wrong cinema. We cannot see that. And I said, I can watch Baby in Toyland or Kama Sutra. I don't care. All I want is to go to the cinema for the first time in my life. Well, she decided that would not be my first time. But cinema for me started as a big frustration. And more than 50 years later, I have never enough.
You still seem to have that energy, that love for film.
Oh yeah. Well, it's just about passion, There's a lot of lost films, as everyone knows. Maybe Kama Sutra is a lost film also.
Might be.
For this one. It's all about sharing. Looking for films is basically trying to revive the experience of having your friends discover new works in cinema, new styles, new genres, or new masterpieces that have been completely forgotten. Remember that when the MoMA archive was established in 1936, or the Cinémathèque Française, or all those major archives, that's just because sound had arrived and they were all afraid that the silent films would be forgotten. So again, they wanted to continue that experience of sharing films that would obviously not be everywhere. And that's what I'm doing, and with many other people. It's just like pursuing my passion. And it's true that over the years I've realized that so many films have never been restored properly. Although there's a trend in the last maybe 15 years that, this film is restored, this other one is restored. But it's always the same films that are restored, and those that people don't feel like restoring, they will never be restored. So the major archives do preserve them, but of course, everyone needs a parent or a backer or a godfather, someone who will basically promote the films.
So what have been some of your major discoveries recently?
I always answer the same thing to that question. My favorite discovery is the next one.
Okay.
And I keep searching for films. I keep asking for films. Oh, by the way, if you have films, call me at Lobster. It's far, it's in Paris, but a lobster at serge@lobsterfilms.com, and you'll find me. But there is no real favorite film, because here again, every film has its moment. In August last year, or was it 2 years ago? I don't remember, with COVID. I went to the Real Thing at the Academy, promoted by Grover Crisp, and I've watched a few films there, including a film I had seen many, many times, which is a Gaumont chronochrome, like early Technicolor Gaumont films of 1913. And I had seen them so many times, but this was the time where they were appreciated. So,
Mhm.
you never can tell. When do you fall in love? Why? It's
Yeah,
just the same
yeah.
kind of mystery.
I imagine you spend a lot of time in archives and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, I worked in an archive at Warner Brothers myself, and I had the experience of discovering some things that
Yeah, of course.
hadn't been seen forever. Um, what's that feeling like when you know that you've just found something that no one else has seen in a century?
That's bizarre. Uh, Regard this, about 50%, to be optimistic, of the films that have ever been shot have now disappeared. They have been destroyed for many reasons and so on. Which means that basically, if you have a collection of very classic films, every other film is a lost film.
Mm,
All of a
hmm.
sudden, the fact that you discover a film and you're the only one to have seen it doesn't mean anything, because it basically happens every day, but you don't know it.
Mm,
Uh,
mm.
and Although now with internet and the databases and the connections with the among the FIAF archives, you realize that many films that everyone claimed having being lost and they had the unique print were actually not lost at all. But the other archives didn't want to mention they had it also.
Okay.
So now we know a bit more, which is very depressing, because we know all those films that will never reappear and that do not survive. I think David Pierce, head of the Library of Congress today, made a survey a few years ago where he found out that about only 15% of the silent feature films in America survived in their original form, which means that there are so many lost films that are miserable, and most of them not being even worth sharing. They are worth, of course, preserving, but to take 1 hour or half an hour from someone and say, I'm going to show you something, you'd
Hmm.
better show something good. Let's consider 10% of what is produced today is really worth preserving and showing in 50 years. Well, it's the same ratio in the past. That means that 90% of the films are like uh, traces of what cinema was in those days, but they are not worth, showing to people who are not specialists and who will not understand what they see. So, in the end, I would say that it doesn't bring me any pride, any sense of power, just the responsibility of preserving it or putting it in the right hands so that the film would be preserved before it goes.
One of the things that you do at Lobster that you have done, and I think you have a lot of other companies in the preservation world. You've restored all the Chaplin shorts.
Yes, we have restored all the Chaplin shorts. It so happens that through Black Hawk, everyone knows the name Black Hawk, we own the Mutual Black Hawk
Hmm.
films.
Hmm.
And the Mutuals include, of course, 12 major Chaplin shorts. So based on that, we decided in 2003 with the British Film Institute, the Bologna Film Archive in Italy, and the Chaplin Estate to spend 5 years searching for all the elements throughout the world for each of the 65 Charlie Chaplin shorts and restore them shot by shot from the best source and everything, and
Hmm.
get them as complete and as beautiful as possible. It happened, and the Keystone films were released in 2009, and then in 2011 and 12 were the SNAs and the Mutual comedies.
Hmm.
Um, it was one of the most amazing projects. First of all, because it was collaborating with major archives and friends. But here, there was a big difference between promoting and restoring the Chaplin shorts versus other films. Chaplin shorts are everywhere. There is
Hmm.
not one collection, one
Right.
archive that doesn't have 10 prints of The Cure. But which
Hmm.
is the good print to get the film from?
That's what I was going to ask. You probably had an embarrassment of riches in the case of Chaplin, right?
Yeah, it was not only was it amazing, there was a wealth of elements, but there was another issue. Chaplin for the SNA and only for the mutuals shot with two cameras, one for export and one for domestic. So we could have two films from the camera negatives, except it's not the same camera negatives, and we would have, of course, to focus on the domestic one, the American negative. So it always was a real issue. But in the end, the films are, well, you've seen them. They're distributed through Flickr Alley, and they are absolutely stunning.
Do you find when you come to restore like a sound film, is it in some way harder to find sound films that are in their original state than it is maybe silence, because silence have been transported all over the world back then?
Well, you will be amazed, but well, first of all, I forgot to say that after doing the Chaplin shorts, we are restoring all the Buster Keaton footage.
Oh, right.
All the shorts that are distributed through Kino. So, but what is amazing is that actually Lobster is the leader in sound restoration for cinema in Europe. And we restore all the sounds for Gaumont, many for Pathé. We've done major films for, all the archives throughout the world, major companies, Paramount, Warner, and RKO, and blah, blah, blah. So in the end, there is no difference for me between sound and silent. It is not more difficult to find a sound or a silent. It is more difficult to show a silent film to anyone than a sound one. That's for sure. And there's another issue, which is that, the older the films are, the more likely they have fallen in the public domain, which is a good and a bad thing at the same time. It's a good thing because if you find a 16 mil print, you can show it. But if you show your 16 mil print, the guy next door will have invested enormous amounts of money restoring the camera negatives or 35 millimeter from 35 millimeter nitrates, will have the market stolen in a way. And so the consequence of this is that everything you will have is lousy 16 mil prints or DVDs made from them. We call them bootleg copies. And the real thing will never be out on the market because there will be no market. So that's a real issue we have at the moment.
How long does it take you to restore something generally?
Well, a few months, but sometimes there's a stone in the shoe, and the process is stopped for one reason or another. The longest was for a 3-minute film. It took 4 years. It was a sound film by Alice Guy called Question Indiscrète. It's a phonocene, which is a sound film of 1906. And of course, The Trip to the Moon in color that everyone knows, that took us actually 11 years, 12 years.
11 years, wow.
Yes. It was discovered in 1993 in Barcelona. Restoration started in 1999, and it opened the Cannes Film Festival in 2011. So you see,
yes, right.
It can take a long time.
Well, speaking of Georges Méliès, one of the things that we're doing at our Newhallywood Silent Film Festival is we're having our inaugural Newhallywood Silent Film Hall of Fame induction. And our first two inductees are William S. Hart. I think when you were there last year, I met you at William S. Hart Park, and Georges Méliès. So we wanted to get somebody in front of the camera, primarily someone in back of the camera. One of the really great things about the pandemic and lockdown is I was able to watch an entire collection of his films that I had never seen. They still hold up. They're just amazing.
Oh, of course. I mean, Méliès was a genre in itself. So it's like listening to watching a Shakespeare play or Beethoven music. I mean, they are unique. They will never go old. They are eternal. The Lumière brothers films are eternal, just the same way. Yes, and Méliès has a story behind it that you may have heard of. Méliès destroyed all these negatives in 1923 when he was evicted from his house in Montreuil. And he had produced 520 films. And he took the 520 negatives. They were all there, all his prints. a few sets, a few costumes, put them in his garden, and lit a match. So basically, everything disappeared. The miracle is that recently, a few original camera negative reappeared in America. And how is it possible that a camera negative that was burnt in Paris could reappear in 1923, could reappear a century later at the Library of Congress? Well, there's an enigma here. Of course, the negatives are in very poor condition, but we have solved the problem. And it will be the subject of a film that we just finished and that will be shown on TCM, I think, soon, called The Méliès Mystery.
Okay.
So I will not give away the end.
Sure,
but there is
sure,
a
sure.
real mystery. And the quality of those negatives is so sparkling that it's just beyond belief. Yeah, there's a lot of stories, a lot of magics, a lot of tricks. And Georges Méliès, who was, of course, the grandfather in Hugo, for those who don't remember,
Right.
was a whiz and so inspirational.
Yeah, one of the things we're doing with our film festival this year, since it's all online, is our theme is silent scandals and tragedies, since we're 100 years past, Fatty Arbuckle and William Desmond Taylor, that type of thing. But I always thought that Méliès fell into that tragedy portion because he was forgotten and his films were destroyed. And then, he was working in I think in a Paris train station, right?
Yes, he was working in a toy shop in the Gare Montparnasse. But let's face it, Arbuckle, it was not his fault. He was taken in circumstances, and he was accused, and then he was innocent. Everyone knew that from the beginning.
Right.
But Méliès destroyed himself his films.
Yeah.
Because he was evicted from his house as a consequence of his bankruptcy. Basically, he went bankrupt in 1913, and even a bit earlier. He would have been evicted from his house in 1914, but something happened in Europe in 1914 that made it like
kind of put things on the back burner.
Yeah, on the back burner. And Pathé, who had his house as a security, decided to evict Méliès. So he was, in a way, the sole author of his downfall, which is very sad. But it happens. So many people start drinking and they go down, and Douglas Fairbanks and then other people like that. You could name hundreds.
One of the great things was that he was rediscovered before his death, so he saw that coming back.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 1929.
Yeah, and once again, for those who want to see the story of that, Hugo is just a fantastic film.
Yeah, you can watch Hugo. There's also, we've produced a film that is, it is with Flicker Alley. It's The Trip to the Moon in color.
Oh, wow.
15 minutes, hand-colored, of course, originally hand-colored. But because the film is only 15 minutes, we produced a film called The Extraordinary Voyage, which is a documentary that goes with it. It's on the same Blu-ray. And it explains the story of Méliès, the story of how the trip to the moon was made, how it disappeared completely, and how it miraculously reappeared.
Wow.
And you mentioned that people call me the Indiana Jones of lost films. Well, that's you watch that documentary, it's like an Indiana Jones movie.
Wonderful. Well, Serge, I really thank you so much for taking the time. Calling us all the way from Paris. We really appreciate that. You were at our film festival last year. Now you're at ours virtually this year. So you got a streak going. So maybe we'll have you back in person next year. Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you. Yeah. Now, one thing I was going to ask on a personal note, did Lobster open an office locally here in California?
Well, yeah. The story is that David Shepard, the famous preservationist, entrusted us with the Black Hawk Film Collection. And he asked us and the Motion Picture Academy to scan his collection. So we basically established a scanning unit, which has turned into a restoration laboratory called Black Hawk Films in the United States, in Burbank.
In Burbank, so, okay.
We're in the neighborhood.
All right, well, just down the road. Well, Serge, you said that if anyone has films out there, they should contact you directly?
You can contact me directly or contact UCLA Film Archive or contact the Academy Film Archive. I mean, what's important is that the films fall in the good hands. Films
Right.
do not last, after like 70, 80 years, all of a sudden they turn to dust. So you have a film, it may seem in good condition. Maybe in a year it won't be there anymore.
Mm.
And maybe it's a lost film by Chaplin. There's one. Or Keaton, there are two, or the Marx Brothers, there's one, or Jean Renoir, or so many. So please, if if you have films you don't know what to do with, please bring them to an official archive. They'll know what to do with them.
Well, Serge, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Stay safe, and hope to see you in person next year.
You too. À bientôt et à l'année prochaine, as we say.
All right. Thanks so much, Serge.
Bye.
And thank you all for watching here on the 2021 New Hollywood Silent Film Festival.